need to make a movie years ago, and we're done. Come along and join the party while we stare at the sun.
Hello, welcome to A Girl and a Gun, the show for filmmakers and content creators. I am Phil Moore, and today we have a special episode for you, part 2 of our interview with David Hannay. I've had a lot of people asking for this. They saw part 1 and they've been waiting for part 2. Well, here it is finally. In part 1 with David, we discussed his early TV career and the film Stone and The Man from Hong Kong. We pick up where we left off, and in this episode we're going to discuss the Cannes Film Festival, David's other TV exploits, and Mapantsula, the film, and he also gives some advice to young filmmakers wanting to make their first feature film. Wait for that. All of that and more coming up right now with part 2 of our interview with David Hannay.
What we've looked at specifically is 67, from middle 60s at Channel 7 through to 1975, in which in which every relationship I had just got built on, and all those there were relationships that just went on all the way through.
So would you say by then, by 74-5 with Man from Hong Kong, you knew what you were doing by now?
What I would like to say is I'm now 73, and if I wasn't open and flexible to knowing that I don't know everything, I mean, every day is a new learning experience, and it should be, and that I think is a really important thing to say from the position of where I am now. Is no, I don't know everything. I just know a little bit more every day, and I hope that I will keep on being open enough to absorb new shit. And I think we all should, I mean, and if you're not flexible, and if you're closed down, you think, I know it all now. That's absolutely
not that you knew it all, but you knew enough.
I knew it. I knew it. I knew that I'd f***ed up a huge amount. I knew that I'd made more mistakes than I'd really wanted to. I knew that I'd learned a lot from making mistakes, and I could just keep rocking.
So what was the next thing you rocked into that, you know?
Well, I mean, after The Man from Hong Kong, I went back to television, and I went and worked with with Robert Bruning again, and another old hero, Eric Porter, and another mentor of mine from the 60s, Bill Harmon. So during the next period between doing The Man from Hong Kong and the next feature film, which was, so we're talking about 74, 75 to 78, not a great long period of time, but during that period I did 48 episodes of Number 96.
Well, that's something we can talk about.
Yeah, I did 48 episodes of Number 96 and 15 episodes of the Unisexes for my wonderful friend and mentor, Bill Harmon. I also worked with Robert Bruning, and we did Is There Anybody There?, which also had George Lazenby in it. Is There Anybody There? The Alternative, Gone to Ground, Paradise.
Well, we've got.
I mean, a number of telly movies.
There's so much TV and features
these are all telly movies, except for the series, which is all the stuff I did with Robert were telly movies.
Is there anything you can tell us about Number 96, just to touch on that?
A fantastic ensemble of people, actors.
So it's such an important and innovative show.
Well, I mean, I came in on it very late. I mean, I was there working on. I worked with. What year did I do that? It must have been 1976. I did the 48 episodes of Number 96 that I did. The previous year I'd done the Unisexes also for Bill, but I was also doing all these telly movies with Robert, so I was jumping backwards and forwards between Gemini and Cash Harmon.
So was that the period of Polymer Love?
Yes.
Yeah.
When I did.
That one I remember very fondly.
See, that was with Eric Porter. So I wish I could remember how all these damn things. I mean, I need to have a list of these things in front of me. But there were all the telly movies that I did in that period. I mean, Paradise, Is There Anybody There, and Polymorlove were all 1975. And the alternative, Gone to Ground, bugger, there's one other. Were 76. Anyhow, I mean, again, it was a period of intense work developing telly movies, which had not been done a lot of before. Working with Bill Harmon, Eric Porter, Robert Bruning again.
Jackie Weaver for Polymorlove.
I mean, Jackie Weaver was in, and of course Hugh Keysburn again, another constant in my life. At the same time, I was getting together, and had been getting together for a number of years, solo, with my friend Tony Williams, who was a prominent New Zealand commercials director. But the interesting thing was, his parents and my parents worked together in the theatre, and his father and my father worked together in radio. So we were the second generation working together from the same background, from a similar background of theatre and what have you, and now film. Now, because a lot of these telly movies I was doing with Gemini were for Seven, and Seven liked what I was doing, Seven became the first backers, because they were also backing feature films in that stage. They were the first backers of Solo. I mean, in fact, I finished with Gemini at Christmas 1976, and in January, February, we were shooting.
So what was Solo about? What was that?
Solo was, again, I must be the only person in the world who would contemplate casting the then world's greatest psycho actor as in Vincent Gill in a romantic lead. But he was my friend, and he'd been in my life by then for 10 years, 11 years, from the 60s, middle 60s, on till when we did Solo in 78. And it was about this guy who flew fire patrol in the forests in New Zealand, but also restored tiger moths.
Right.
So that was he flew solo, 8 hours a day. Can you imagine anything more boring than doing grid patterns to look for fires in forests? That was his job.
And that was the premise of the movie.
That was his job. So he flew solo. He also was a sole parent. So he was a solo parent, and he had this bizarre relationship with his kid. And into their life at the very beginning of the film comes this Australian girl hitchhiking through New Zealand by herself, solo, getting away from being dominated by her family, and getting away from shouldn't you get married, or shouldn't you be in a relationship?
You all right? How far's the next town?
You'd never make it tonight. You're looking for a place to stay.
Well, the forest's out.
Why don't you stay the night at our place?
Oh, yeah, may as well. It isn't much, but it is better than sleeping in a ditch.
Get in.
Put your things in the bag.
Okay. Thanks.
Paul,
Judy.
I'm Billy the Kid.
So it was all these people having solo lives, and they come together during a long weekend. That's it.
So as a production, how did that film go for you? Was it a good experience? It
was a wonderful experience. The people working on it were all terrific, but we had a nightmare of camera breakdown, which didn't become apparent until we saw rushes, sometimes weeks later, and then we had to do reshoots. It was just a nightmare. I mean, it was just too bizarre for words that we had to go back and reshoot things because of technical problems. But notwithstanding that, it was a terrific experience making the film. And it was and it was the first feature that had been shot in New Zealand in 16 years. So I was just coming together with people who'd been working in commercials together, in documentaries together, but there was one person who was absolutely special on the shoot. His name was Bob Allen, and he was the sound man. And he was the father of the crew, unquestionably, because he had, I mean, I've got a picture somewhere of him and Russell Crowe's grandfather working together during the Second World War, because Russell Crowe's grandfather was a famous New Zealand cameraman. And Bob Allen was a famous New Zealand sound man. He came to Australia with Cecil Holmes, who of course is a famous New Zealander, and he was the sound guy on Captain Thunderbolt, which was made back in the 50s. And then anyhow, he went off to England eventually, because that's where the movie industry was. And he was just a killer sound man from all time. I mean, this was not even back in 78. Bob Allen was not a young man, you know, white-haired and father of the crew. But he had done. Here we go round the mulberry bush, which if you've ever seen was from a sound point of view, was just
The English film.
English film with this guy on, talking to camera, riding on a bike or from the back of a bus. I mean, you know, he did The Caretaker, which was, of course, done all on location, but was a play, a Harold Plinter play, in which dialogue was critical, and they were making it in the worst possible noisy location you could possibly imagine. He did King Lear with Peter Brook, and Marat Sard with Peter Brook, and Tell Me No Lies with Peter Brook. Peter Brook was a theatre director. There will be no post-sync. Ask me about Solo. This guy made such a difference to the crew. He actually had done all these, he had this huge, amazing career. Day of the Jackal with Zimmerman. I mean, you know, he'd worked with all these great directors in the UK, and he came back to New Zealand, and he worked on Our Little Picture, and made, and his understanding and respect for the process was suddenly imbued all these people and inspired everybody. I mean, I can remember once, this is critical to the point I'm making, Vincent Gill and Lisa Pears were rehearsing a scene, and Vincent sort of was walking in towards a wall, and of course Vincent, having worked in television in Australia for camera pointers who said you can't do this and no we can't, and sound people saying no that's not good for me and what have you, said this isn't good for you, is it, Bob? And Bob said, Vincent, you and Lisa and Tony, you work out how you want to do it. It's our job then to capture it. I mean, you know, so that was important. Anyhow, so that was Solo, which was just, as I say, the first picture being done in New Zealand in 16 years. Well, a whole lot of people had never made a picture before. I mean, Tony had been an editor and a cameraman. Tony Williams, who was the director and co-writer.
Well, you're well known for producing the first films for many directors, including myself, actually.
13 dramatic. I mean, if we did, if there's more than 20 first-time directors, but if we just confine ourselves to dramatic feature films, that's 13, and you know, which is a lot. I mean, and you know, so including you with Mortal Fools, and going. I mean,
Brian Trenchard.
But also, of course, the important thing about working with I mean, 3 of the first time people I was first timing too. You know, I mean that was Frank Britton, Sandy Harbert, Brian Trenchard Smith. I mean, you know, they were my first pictures. So they were all first-time directors, but they were clearly first pictures for me too.
But you've done many more since then.
But from then on, I mean, I of course, you know, I mean, after doing Solo with Tony, then there was Ian Coglan, with whom I'd worked at Gemini at Channel 9 with in television, and he wrote and directed and acted in Alison's Birthday, which came the year after I did I had done solo, and part of that was Michael Falloon was in that, who'd been first assistant director on The Spoiler and had worked on worked on The Man from Hong Kong, and Lisa Pears played a supporting role in Alison's Birthday, having played the lead in Solo. I mean, you know.
There's so many films we can discuss, but after Solo, what was the next important one for you that you think through the late 70s into the 80s?
Well, Alison's Birthday was clearly important.
If there is a spirit in the room, please move the glass towards the yes. Who is it?
Alison! Man is coming!
It was part of my relationship with Ian, which went from Alison's Birthday, which he wrote and directed in 1978, to Kadicha, which he wrote, that was directed by James Bogle's debut feature, 87-88, to 2001, Cubby House. So there's a 20-year relationship with Ian Coghlan as a writer, which also started out at Channel 9 with him being a director and a post-production supervisor. So again, relationships. Everything is in relationships, building a relationship, maintaining a relationship, loyalty to people that you kind of work with, you know, that where they fit down the track. So
could I also just ask a question about, with Man from Hong Kong, there was stuff in Hong Kong, in China. You've worked in South Africa, there's been things in America, shot around the world. So how has it worked for you shooting in all these other locations, shooting a film in another country with maybe producers, co-producers from that country?
Again, that's a question of me being entirely open and flexible, you know. Obviously, Love and Ambush, which is actually set in Cambodia and Vietnam in 1972. We didn't shoot it in Vietnam and Cambodia. Mainly we didn't shoot in Cambodia because of more landmines than people, and we valued our extremities. So we shot it in the Philippines. I'd never worked in the Philippines before, but Phil Warner, who was the line producer and had worked with me at Channel 9, and I'd known him, and he was a mate, and we talked, and I knew he knew about the Philippines, so he was able to introduce me to the manner of working. Again, being the entirely flexible person I am, I mean, it doesn't matter to me how different the working methods are. I mean, there are some people who go somewhere and say, I don't like the way you work, you have to work the way we work.
You just adapt.
I just adapt. I adapt to the way the people function. Why would you want to change it? I mean, I am given to understand, this is anecdotal, it's not me, but, you know, Americans come to Australia to make big pictures, and because they have a certain way of doing things, they expect everybody to fit into their box. I don't expect anybody to fit into my box. I'm working in Soweto. Am I going to expect to bring what I do in...
And that was...
Mapantsula? Yeah.
So let's talk about that for a little bit. What was that experience like?
Amazing.
Hey, come out here! Man, lost my aid, man. What kind of music? I'm on, lost my aid. I said, lost my aid. Cut the lost my aid. Lost my aid. Justice. So good man, you're fucking spy.
Ufunanda pa wena. You'll get me into trouble.
Why is that? Is there anything wrong with me? Nice place now. Very rich.
The madam is at the pool.
And so? I need some money.
You always want money.
it came to me again. I'm in both. I'm a genre person, obviously, if you look at all the pictures I did, but I'm an intensely political person as well. And in '86, this young guy came to me with this project. This is '86, and he'd never made a picture before. He was a location manager and a unit manager, and he wanted to produce a film. And he'd been working with these people in South Africa, and I met him at Cannes. I met him in Cannes, and that was one of these wonderfully chanced meetings, because he was about to leave. It was his last day, and he had to go, and he hadn't got anywhere. And part of the problem was because it was South African, people were going, well, we can't work with you. There's a boycott. Again, no, not saying, well, the fact that this was an anti-apartheid film, did this not impinge on it? They didn't even want to talk to him. Anyhow, he was at the bar, talking to this woman who he humorously later told me was getting bored with his whinge. He also told me that she was a Marxist lesbian feminist Canadian filmmaker. Anyhow, she was talking to him and he was talking to her, and he was having a whinge, and I was there sitting at a table with Mary and my 4 children, our 4 children, and eventually she said, "Oh, I mean, stop whinging at me. Go and talk to the guy over there with all the children. He must be rich." Well, we didn't have a cracker. It was all on the plastic. We were just there, and I was just taking my kids for a good time round the world, and we were living up in the hills behind Cannes. Anyhow, he came over, and he was incredibly diffident and polite, and he said to Mary, "Do you mind if I talk to your husband?" And she said, "No, not at all." And he had a VHS in his hand and a sheet of paper. At least he was intelligent enough to know you must put everything on one sheet, because nobody's got time to read more than one page. I read the page and thought, "F***." Then I said, "What's that you got in your hand?" He said, "That's a VHS called The Grabber. It's a bootleg video we shot in Soweto, which is about the main character, who's a Soweto gangster, pickpocket." I said, "We better go have a look." Anyhow, look, we went and it was shots, Super 8, and it would look like a piece of shit. But Thomas Mogatlani, the actor, I thought, if he looks that good on this crappy VHS, what's he going to be like on the big sheet? Sensational. Anyhow, he was the co-writer with Oliver Smits, the director, and it was just amazing. I mean, apart from Thomas Mogatlani, who was the lead and would have been then late 30s, and Dolly Ratibi, who was a bit older than me, I was the oldest person on this picture by like half. Everybody, I mean, I was about to be 50, and everybody else were these kids in their 20s. Again, never having made pictures before. I mean, they were all coming together. Well, they'd worked on, some of them had worked on other people's
And
pictures.
you were there in Soweto when they were shooting?
Of course. I was there. It was just, the incredible thing was it took us a year to put it together, and then the next Cannes I had it. So I met him at Cannes in '86. By '87 I pulled all the pieces of the financing and the guarantees and all those things together, given that people were saying to me, "How can you possibly make a picture in South Africa? There's a boycott." And me saying, "Well, this is what it is, then you won't be able to get the film out. Well, you'll have to do the post in Germany." "Oh, no, we want to do the post in South Africa, so we want to get the feel." So it became a passion, an obsession, and a political undertaking for me to do. But at the same time, it was an entertainment. It was a gangster movie. It was a genre picture as well. So I knew that what we were doing was going to get to an audience. But so '86 was I met Pierre Montocchio at Cannes, who was the originating producer. Thank goodness for Pierre. Without him, I would never have got to even know about this picture. By 87, Cannes 87, I was pulling all the bits and pieces together. Late 87, we were shooting. By Cannes 88, that's a 2-year span, we were in official selection with this picture. Oliver Schmitz had never made a movie before. He hadn't been on a set before. He just was an editor. He'd spent his life in a cutting room and writing this brilliant film.
It won several awards, didn't it?
Yeah, oh yes. I mean, awards all over the bloody place, including being the South African nomination for the Oscars in '89. It was an exceptional film. Every film that Oliver has made subsequently, every feature film, because he's made a living in television as well, every feature film he's made has been selected for Cannes. He's got a 100% track record with Cannes selection from Mapantsula on. So, to Hijack Stories, to Paris Je t'aime, of which he's one of the many directors in Paris Je t'aime. Have you seen Paris Je t'aime?
No.
No, anyhow, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's terrific, and then Life Above All, which is again another South African.
Well,
picture.
speaking of Cannes, you've been going pretty much every year.
Well, the first presence of anything that I was involved in at Cannes was '75, which was both Stone and The Man from Hong Kong. So my relationship with Cannes has been, generally speaking, every year. The only times I haven't been to Cannes has been when I've been making another picture, and then I always would take out an ad saying, sorry, I can't be there. I'm shooting a picture. Hope all my friends and colleagues have a great Cannes. See you next year.
So why do you attend other festivals as much at all?
No, Cannes.
Why Cannes in particular?
Well, because it's unique. There are other markets and there are other festivals, and but Cannes is the only market festival which is a sensational, chaotic, anarchic combination of culture and commerce.
Well, since you've been there for so many times over the years, how has it changed then from those old days in the 70s up till now?
Well, it's the same, but it's again, because it's everybody's flexible. It's evolved. Certain films have been popular at certain times, and then they fall out of favour, and there are other films. But the interesting thing about Cannes, for me, is of course because it's French. It is chaos and anarchy are good things, not bad things. You don't fear chaos. You don't fear anarchy because it gives energy and excitement, and it is always a collection of people from all over the planet come together for 12 days. You'll get people from Japan and Paraguay and Uruguay and Bolivia and Chile and Argentina and Italy and obviously France and Germany and the UK and Australia and New Zealand. I mean, and then subsequently,
So every time you go there, are you looking for funding for a film, or you're selling a film?
I'm always looking at selling the future, yes, or selling what I've already got, or trying to sell what I've already got.
So you've all got something to go there with.
I always have something to go there with. Yes, I mean, if I've got something that is being made, I've always got that in my hand. It's easy to have it in your hand these days because it can be on a DVD. In the old days, I would be struggling there to Cannes with huge bloody great 5 cans of 10 reels of film. I mean, that's carrying that kind of stuff to Cannes. So it's one way it's evolved is that you can walk around with a DVD in your pocket, which you couldn't walk around with 10 reels of
DVD
film.
in a one-page synopsis.
Yes, yeah, or a pitch document, or if you're looking to sell. And of course, there are all the sales agents from all over the world. There are all the distributors, and of course, over the years, I've built up significant relationships with people. So I have evolved into being a Cannes identity. You know, where's Hannay? This year, when I couldn't go because I was sick, you know, what happened to Hannay? You know, I mean, you know, where's the well-known seersucker jacket, the Panama hat, bopping down the Croisette? It's not here. I mean, I was missed. It's great to be missed. I mean, worse, of course, was me missing it, because it was just like terrible pain. There I was, being sick as a dog, not being able to be there. And
is it because you love the festival in Canada, or you just love the south of France?
Both. Oh, I love France. I love France. I love France. I mean, it is, yeah. I mean, it's a place with which I have a special relationship. And of course, and Cannes, as I say, I've been to others. Where have I been? I've been to Shanghai, Toronto, New York, London. I mean, lots of festivals. They're all good. But Cannes is just special because it's everything. I mean, just to give you an example of the French and the attitude, in 1968 there was the Paris Spring, and the festival was of course happening in May, which is in the spring, and there was all the revolutions. There was the Baader Meinhof people erupting in Germany. There was a Paris Spring with people like Danny the Red and what have you, and then leaping onto the stage in Cannes in 1968 was Truffaut and Godard and a few other people, closed the festival down and said, well, we'll come back with our own.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so they came back. The following year there's the Cannes, the director's fortnight. It's at Cannes too. Then later on there's the Samantha Critique, the Critics' Week. And then there's the Cinefondation, and then there's the Marché. But the great thing about given that Cannes started out purely as a festival, it embraced everything. I mean, you know, the festival didn't go, oh, you can't come, this is us. You can't do this, you're getting in the way of us. They just said, oh, come, okay, come, more the merrier. I mean, so you had all these combative and complementary things that all eventually became one whole thing. So now you have all these pieces that come together. This, you know, the marché, which is the marketplace. Sometimes in any year you might see a better film, or there'll be a more interesting breakout film in the marketplace than is in selection. So it's just this kind of wonderful. Nothing is ever going to be as good as or replace Cannes. Not that other things aren't terrific for what they are.
Well, this leads me, there's lots of other stuff we could talk about, but I want to wrap this up. And I want to finish, if you don't mind, with your views on what's happening with cinema now and movie making today and the whole distribution mechanism. Because I know you love movies, you love seeing movies in the cinema.
Well, yes, I mean, in that because of coming from a background of the theatre as a child, going to see plays, in being part of this big animal in the dark, an audience, and seeing actors and having that relationship of audience to actor. To me, cinema is an extension of theatre. It is theatre. It's an emotional and sensual experience. That, you know, people come together as an audience. There's something about being part of the animal in the dark, sharing the experience of what's up on the big screen. Now, you can't have that sitting watching a television set. You can't have that watching a movie on your iPad or your iPhone or whatever it is.
You put it quite well before, your distinction between cinema and television.
Well, television, there's nothing wrong with television. I've worked in television. I've loved television. But it's a difference between a miniature and a mural. You know, and you don't want to kind of look at you don't want a mural brought down to miniature size.
But you were saying, like, television's great for intellectual...
Well, again, you can... Certainly television can be an intellectual medium because you've got time to explore things. You can actually come back and, this is part one and part two will be next week, and you can, okay, I've got part one, I've time to think about the implications of what that's about. Yes, of course, you can explore intellectual pursuits. You can have an intellectual, but you don't. I don't mean that cinema is mindless. Obviously, it can be of the mind, but it's not what is important for you.
So at its heart, cinema, by
Is it-
distinction,
Is an emotional central medium. It's how you feel rather than. I mean, of course, you can think. I mean, cinema it is at very best an art form, but it must always be entertaining and engaging with an audience. And it's got to do that. I mean, you know, there is cinema which is clearly, you know, works of great craft and not necessarily works of great art, but they have to be entertaining and they have to engage with an audience. So clearly, I prefer to see movies in a cinema. I mean,
So
that's,
how do you feel
but
about
I
working
understand that things have evolved. You know, I mean, people watch. I mean, I sit in a plane and watch people with their. I mean, not watching the movies, the plane movies, but watching on their computer screens. You know, I mean, on quite small screens. I mean, a movie that, you know, that's probably a favourite. They might have watched it 10 times. Who knows? But you know, they're watching their picture that they've brought with them. I mean, clearly people are watching movies on their phones, for God's sake. What a crazy place to watch a movie on. iPads, I don't know, all this bloody shit. Computer screens. It's not where I want to watch a picture. I acknowledge that is the future. I acknowledge that cinema... There'll always be a place for cinema, I hope. I mean, I don't want to think that it dies, but of course I must acknowledge that there will be things that get made from now on, which will be, you know, video streamed immediately. I mean, VOD is definitely...
that aren't even designed for a cinema screen.
They're not designed for cinema screen, or they may have or people may make them with the idea that wouldn't it be great if we could get onto a movie screen, but we know we can get a VOD release, so that's probably where we should be focusing. I mean, there will be all of these things. The other factor which we have to deal with, of course, is piracy. And of course, if getting out instantly, I mean, as some people have, you know, they have a video on demand released as the same day as it goes out in the movie house because it's going to get pirated in 2 seconds anyway. I mean, I've got pictures of mine that people tell me I've seen Alison's birthday on YouTube, but you have to see it in 15-minute segments. I mean, I didn't license it to be on YouTube. I mean, it's a rip-off. I mean, you know, the intellectual property of Ian Coghlan and me has been stolen. This happens to us constantly. Is it a problem? Clearly so. How can you possibly ask an investor to put money into something which you cannot guarantee the security of the property? That it can, you know, the minute you make it, it can be stolen. And of course, you know, and I mean, I recently worked with a young director, of course, who's part of the modern culture, and we sold 30,000 copies of the DVD when it first out. But he was so excited about the millions of hits that he was getting, and I'm saying, it's theft. You're crazy. And what does this guy do? He downloads all the time, of course, because he's part of the culture. I won't mention. I've mentioned part of his name, but I mean, so you've got the people who are wanting to make pictures today are also part of the culture that steals, and it is theft. I hate the word piracy. It romanticizes it, because to be a pirate is a romantic thing. It is theft, pure and simple.
So how do we combat that?
Well, I mean, clearly I'm part of various anti-piracy programs over the years. It's impossible. It's a losing battle. So we adapt. So we adapt. You have to get the picture out there. Yes, it would be great to see it in the cinema, but if you can get it out video on demand and people will pay, $2 for a download or whatever it's going to be, it's better than nothing. So clearly I acknowledge that the future is a very different place to the place that I love, which is...
And this is the trick now. How do we make enough money back on our films in this new environment to justify, to make a living, to make more films?
Well, that's the problem. That's the problem. If you can't guarantee to an investor the security of what they've invested in, how are you going to get money? And I'm, you know, I mean, clearly every industry in the world has got some level of government support. Even the industry in the United States, which has got tax breaks in various places. So
but then the music industry's been through this, and
they have. We have to look at what the music industry has done, because clearly they've done it. They've got through it. I mean, music, of course, isn't as expensive as making. I mean, you can spend a lot of money making a record. I acknowledge that, but you can also, you know, make a record for nothing in your bedroom, because the quality of the equipment on which you're recording.
Well, in a way, and it's sort of come full circle. The kind of attitude that you guys were making Stone under, that, you know, everyone muck in, really low budget. The kind of deals you're brokering, that's how the industry is working now.
It has
independent film.
It has to. And all power to those people who are putting themselves out there to do the best they can on very little. Because, you know, one of the things that does annoy me, particularly coming out of, you know, I mean, I've lectured at some of these places, I won't be specific about their names, elitist film schools, where you've got people coming out of them with their diplomas and or their degrees from some of them. You said, well, I'm now a director, I'm now a producer. I mean, where's the money? And I want, you know, where's my $5 million to make my first picture? F*** off! You know, get together with a group of friends. Get together and make a picture for as little as it is physically possible to do it. And if you're really good at it, people will see that. You know, David Russell, who's gone on to make some very fine pictures in recent years, his first film, Spanking the Monkey, $80,000 in 1993, I think it was. What was it about? Well, it was pretty confronting. It was about this boy who broke his leg, was f***ing his mother while his father was away being a commercial traveller somewhere. And and of course, as the title said, Spanking the Monkey, he did a huge amount of wanking, as most teenage boys do, when he wasn't f***ing his mother. I mean, that was David O. Russell's first picture. He went on to make one of the best pictures set against the background of Iraq, you know, with George Clooney and Mark Wahlberg and Cliff Curtis. I mean, what did you do? The Fighter. I mean, Mark Wahlberg,
yeah.
Christian Bale, two actor Oscars. I mean, but he started with a group of friends, you know, that he probably met at university, film school, whatever. Made this really confronting.
Do you think that's still possible for a filmmaker to make low budget, less than great films, but to develop that career and have a chance to make a second and a third film?
I mean, what I would always recommend anybody does as a first picture is something that's incredibly compelling, that's something that's very confronting, that's something that's out there, you know.
Something that gets noticed.
Something that gets noticed, you know, whether it's, you know, two people f***ing brilliantly and developing a relationship while they're f***ing. There's, you know, what's the best, cheapest movie? It's got to have a great script. Two people in one room.
Mm.
What's the best thing you can do in one room? Well, the f***ing. I mean, so that's, you know, so there's the young Australian who made a Mexican film that got the camera door at Cannes, 2 or 3 years ago, whenever it was just, that's what his film was about. I've not seen it, unfortunately, because it's never been shown, except at festivals. Mm. And I never saw it at Cannes. I didn't even know anything about it, except when this boy charming boy with an Australian accent got up to get his camera door for the best first feature at the Cannes Film Festival. And fundamentally, that's what it was about. Two people in one room. And it was,
as long as the script is good and the actors are good,
and they're brave enough to go wherever you want to go, wherever the story happens to go. I mean, it has to be. I mean, you know, to take The Sessions, for example, which is Ben Lewin's not his first picture. He's made a number of terrific films. But there's he reads an article by this guy Mark O'Brien, I think. Yeah, Mark O'Brien. You know, about who wrote as a disabled person in an iron lung about sex and sex and the disabled. Anyhow, Ben read this, and out of this came this picture of the Sessions. And of course, it's got Helen Hunt, who's an Oscar winner, who's absolutely just sensationally brilliant in the film. But part of being in the film was she played a sex therapist, and part of that was being totally naked, full frontal, because that was a part of what she was presenting in the character. So if she hadn't wanted to be completely naked, this woman of a certain age, she's not young anymore, she's, well, I don't know how old, and she certainly had no work done, I can tell you that, having looked at every inch of her body and her face, her beautiful lived-in face, and she's just sensational. And the young man, Hawkes, you know, who does the entire picture on a gurney or in the iron lung, and all you get is his head and his brilliance and his charm and his humour and his vibrancy and desire for a life. I mean, you know...
So what would be your one main piece of advice for young filmmakers wanting to make it in this industry now?
If you can't write, find a terrific writer to work with, because if you don't have a great script, you've got nothing. A great script will get you great actors, even if you're not, you know, even if you're a first timer. You can get great, if you've got a great script and you get great actors, I mean, you've got a chance, a shot. They don't have to be the best known actors in the world, but they better be good. If you can't write, get a great writer. And no, you can't write. I mean, or if you've got a good idea and good story, you need to work with a writer, with somebody who's a terrific writer. And then that gets you cast, because no actor's going to be. He's got to read a script and go, oh, I'll be in this. It's a piece of shit, but it might be okay down the track. No, not going to happen. If they don't like the screenplay, you're not going to get the actors. Then you've got to inspire people from amongst your acquaintances, friends, people you were at school with or what have you, who can do all the other shit, to be your editor, to be your cameraman, to be your designer, all of those things. You've got to get people together. You have to inspire them. That's it. If you can't do that, you shouldn't be even thinking about it. Go be a lawyer or a doctor or a dentist.
And don't expect to get rich.
And clearly, if you're going to make movies, don't expect to get rich. I mean, as I have said very publicly, I don't do what I do for a living. I do what I do to live. It's my obsession. It's my passion. I mean, you know, it isn't sensible in the usual sense of how we understand the word sensible. I could have been a lawyer. I've had lawyers in my family from the 1700s down to now. You know, 2 chief justices, innumerable QCs.
So why do you keep doing it?
Because it's what I do. It's my passion. It's my obsession. And I mean, you know, people say, you know, when are you going to retire? I say, no, never. That's death, isn't it? You know, I would hope that as I draw my breath breath, I'm doing something.
Well, David Hannay, you've cheated death already this year, and I hope you've got many more years left in you. Thank you very much for your time today.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
We only just scratched the surface.
We have.